Hi, my name is Dora and I'm 15 years old. Today is my birthday. I woke up to the soft hum of my mother singing in the kitchen, a gentle reminder that today was not just any day. As I stretched, my eyes landed on a small pile of wrapped gifts, modest but bright, arranged on a corner table. My heart fluttered with excitement, each gift a mystery, a possibility. Despite our tight budget, Mom always found a way to make me feel cherished on my special days. "Happy birthday, my love," my mother greeted, her smile bright but tired. The table was set with pancakes, a birthday tradition. Yet, amidst the celebration, her eyes held a firmness as she handed me my school bag. "Enjoy your breakfast, but remember, school waits for no one, not even the birthday girl." I sighed, knowing she was right. As much as I wanted to spend the day basking in birthday bliss, responsibilities loomed large. I took a seat at the table, savoring the sweet, fluffy pancakes. Mom had even added a few chocolate chips, a rare treat. It was her way of making the day special, even when we couldn't afford extravagant celebrations. After breakfast, I reluctantly grabbed my bag and headed for the door. "Don't forget, we'll have a little party tonight," Mom called after me. I turned and gave her a grateful smile, hoping the day would fly by. Walking to school, I couldn't help but think about the countless birthdays we'd celebrated in different cities. We'd moved so many times that it was hard to keep track. Each new city brought a new school, new friends, and new beginnings, but through it all, Mom was my constant. Conversations about my father, however, remained off limits. He was a sealed chapter in Mom's book of life, leaving a void filled by my vivid imagination. As I neared the school, I noticed a man sitting quietly by the alley we always passed. He seemed out of place with his kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that contradicted the warnings I often heard about strangers. On impulse, I approached him. "Would you like my lunch?" I asked, holding out my sandwich. His grateful smile was a silent exchange of kindness, sparking a flame of curiosity about the world Mom warned me against. As I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this man than met the eye. Little did I know, this encounter would set the wheels in motion for a journey that would change my life forever. The bell rang, marking the end of the school day, but my thoughts were still tangled up in the morning's encounter. I packed my books slowly, each movement a deliberate delay. I needed time to process everything. Mom and I had moved so many times, and each city had its own set of memories, good and bad. But no matter where we went, there was always one constant, my mother's silence about my father. I glanced at the other kids hurrying to leave, laughing and chatting about their plans for the evening. They seemed so carefree, so sure of their place in the world. For me, every new city meant starting over, blending in, trying not to stand out. It was exhausting, but Mom always assured me it was for the best. Our life was a mosaic of fleeting friendships and temporary homes. From Boston to New York, Philadelphia to Baltimore, we'd lived in tiny apartments and worn-down houses, always moving just as I started to feel settled. Mom worked tirelessly, taking whatever jobs she could find to keep us afloat. Her hands were always busy, whether it was cooking, cleaning, or typing away at some temp job. She was a whirlwind of energy, but at night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her crying softly. It was during those nights that I'd lie awake, my mind drifting to the one person who was always absent from our conversations, my father. I had no pictures, no stories, just a name I wasn't even sure was real. Every time I asked, Mom would change the subject, her face clouding over with a sadness she couldn't hide. Today's encounter with the man in the alley had stirred something in me. He wasn't just another homeless person, there was a gentleness in his eyes, a quiet dignity that intrigued me. He didn't fit into the stories Mom told me about the dangers of the streets. There was a connection, a familiarity I couldn't explain. As I walked home, my mind was a whirlpool of questions. Who was he? Why did I feel this strange pull towards him? And why did it feel like my past was suddenly catching up with me? When I finally got home, I found Mom in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. The smell of tomatoes and basil filled the air, a comforting aroma that made our small apartment feel like home. She looked up and smiled, but there was a hint of worry in her eyes. "How was school?" she asked, her voice light but probing. "Fine," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetie." "What's on your mind?" I hesitated, the words stuck in my throat. "Do you remember that man we saw in the alley this morning?" Her stirring paused, just for a moment, before she continued. "Yes, I do." "Why do you ask?" "I saw him again on my way to school. He looked different from what you've always warned me about. He seemed kind." Mom's face tightened, and she set the spoon down. "Dora, I've told you, not everyone out there has good intentions. You have to be careful. Promise me you'll stay away from him." "But Mom," I protested, "what if he needs help? What if he's not like the others?" "Dora, please," she said, her voice strained. "You don't understand. There are things you don't know, things I've kept from you to protect you." I felt a surge of frustration. "Like what? Why can't you ever tell me anything about our past? About Dad?" Her eyes flashed with pain, and she turned away. "Because some things are better left buried," she whispered. I stood there, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to push, to demand answers, but the look on her face stopped me. Instead, I retreated to my room, my heart heavy with unanswered questions. Lying on my bed, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Mom's secrecy only fueled my curiosity. I needed to know more. I needed to find out who the man in the alley was and why he seemed to stir memories I didn't even know I had. As the sun set, casting long shadows across my room, I made a silent vow. I would find out the truth, no matter what it took. The shadows of the past were growing longer, and it was time to step into the light. I woke up the next morning with a sense of purpose. The questions that had kept me awake now propelled me forward. I dressed quickly, grabbed my school bag, and made my way to the kitchen where Mom was already bustling around. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and she handed me a mug, her eyes softer today, as if she sensed my determination. "Morning, sweetie," she said, giving me a quick hug. "Ready for another day?" I nodded, sipping the coffee, but my mind was already on the alley and the man I hoped to see again. I had to find out more about him. "Yeah, I guess so. I'll see you tonight, okay?" "Okay, be safe," she replied, watching me with a hint of concern as I headed out the door. The walk to school felt longer today, my steps heavy with anticipation. As I approached the alley, my heart began to race. Would he be there? Would he remember me? When I turned the corner, I saw him sitting in the same spot, his eyes distant but kind. He looked up as I approached, and a small smile spread across his face. "Good morning," he said softly. "Hi," I replied, feeling a strange mix of relief and excitement. "I brought you something." I handed him a sandwich I had made that morning. "Thank you," he said, taking the sandwich with a grateful nod. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," I said, sitting down on the curb beside him. "My name is Dora. What's yours?" He hesitated for a moment, then replied, "My name is Michael." "Nice to meet you, Michael," I said, trying to sound casual despite the questions bubbling inside me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," he said, taking a bite of the sandwich. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, what's your story?" Michael looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and something else, maybe hope. "It's a long story, Dora. One that's not easy to tell." "I've got time," I said, leaning forward. "Please, I really want to know." He sighed, setting the sandwich down. "All right, but it's not a happy story. I used to have a family, a home, a job. But things fell apart. I made mistakes, lost everything. Now, I'm just trying to survive." His words hit me hard. There was a vulnerability in his voice that made me feel closer to him, more connected. "I'm sorry," I said, not knowing what else to say. School couldn't have ended soon enough. My mind had been a blur of half-listened to lessons and daydreams about Michael. By the time the last bell rang, I was out the door, walking briskly toward the alley where I had left him. The questions buzzing in my head grew louder with each step. As I rounded the corner, my heart sank. The alley was empty. Michael was gone. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. Part of me wanted to wait, hoping he'd come back, but another part of me knew I couldn't stand there forever. With a sigh, I turned and started walking home, the weight of unanswered questions pressing down on me. When I got home, Mom was in the kitchen, the smell of her homemade lasagna filling the air. She looked up and smiled when she saw me, but I could tell she sensed something was off. "How was your day?" she asked, her voice gentle but probing. "It was okay," I replied, trying to sound casual as I dropped my bag by the door. "Mom, I've been thinking about that man from the alley. Michael." Mom's face tightened, and she turned back to the stove, stirring the sauce with more force than necessary. "Dora, we've talked about this. It's not safe to get involved with strangers." "But he's not just any stranger, Mom," I insisted, taking a step closer. "He's different. And I think he knows something about our past. About Dad." Mom's hand froze, and for a moment, there was complete silence. Then she turned to face me, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and fear. "Dora, I've told you before, there are things you don't understand. Things that are better left buried." "But why?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Why can't you just tell me the truth? I deserve to know about my own father." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she shook her head. "It's not that simple. Your father, he wasn't the man you think he was. He made choices that put us all in danger. That's why we've had to move so many times. That's why I've kept things from you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. All the years of moving, the secrecy, the warnings, they suddenly made a terrible kind of sense. "So, you're saying Michael is connected to Dad somehow? That he knows what happened?" "I don't know," Mom whispered, her voice breaking. "But I'm begging you, Dora, for your own safety, stay away from him." I wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but the look on Mom's face stopped me. She was scared, truly scared. And that scared me more than anything. I nodded slowly, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. "Okay, Mom," I said quietly. "I'll stay away from him. But if he shows up again, if he tries to talk to me, I can't promise I won't listen." Mom closed her eyes and nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Just be careful, Dora. Please." That night, as I lay in bed, my mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. Michael's face, Mom's tears, the countless questions that still had no answers. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I had to find out the truth, no matter what it took. The next morning, I woke with a renewed sense of determination. I dressed quickly, grabbed my bag, and headed out the door before Mom could stop me. As I walked to school, my eyes scanned every alley, every corner, hoping to catch a glimpse of Michael. When I arrived at school, I went through the motions of my classes, but my mind was elsewhere. During lunch, I slipped out of the building and made my way back to the alley. It was still empty. I stood there for a moment, feeling a mix of frustration and disappointment. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I turned and saw Michael standing at the far end of the alley, watching me. I walked toward him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Michael," I said, stopping a few feet away. "I need to know the truth. About you, about my father. Please." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Dora. I'll tell you what I know. But you have to promise me something." "What?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You have to be careful. The truth is dangerous. It's why your mother has kept it from you all these years. But if you're sure you want to know, I'll tell you. I'm sure, I said, my voice steady. I need to know. Michael sighed and motioned for me to sit down on a nearby crate. Your father and I were friends, once. We worked together, and for a while, things were good. But then he got involved with some dangerous people. People who wouldn't hesitate to hurt anyone who got in their way. When things went bad, he disappeared, and your mother did everything she could to keep you safe. That's why you've been moving around so much. I listened, my mind reeling. But why did he get involved with those people? What happened to him? That's the part one don't know, Michael admitted. All I know is that he was trying to protect you and your mother. He made some bad choices, but in the end, he did it for you. Tears filled my eyes as I took in his words. So he's still out there somewhere. My father? Michael shook his head. I don't know. I haven't seen him in years. But I do know that he loved you very much. And he wanted more than anything to keep you safe. I nodded, trying to process everything. Thank you, Michael. I needed to hear this. He gave me a sad smile. Just be careful, Dora. The truth can be a dangerous thing. Promise me you'll stay safe. I promise, I said, standing up. But I won't stop looking for answers. As I walked away, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I didn't have all the answers, but I had a start. And that was enough to keep me going. The shadows of the past were still there, but now I had a light to guide me through them. The next few days passed in a blur of school and unanswered questions. Each morning, I found myself glancing toward the alley, hoping to see Michael again. But every time, the alley was empty, and the sense of urgency gnawed at my insides. Finally, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I left school early, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. As I approached the alley, my steps slowed, my breath catching in my throat. The alley was just as empty as it had been all week. Michael was gone. Panic set in. What if something had happened to him? What if he had moved on, leaving me with only fragments of the truth? I paced back and forth, the rain soaking through my clothes, until finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I pulled out my phone and called my mom. Mom, it's me, I said, my voice trembling. I need to talk to you. It's about Michael. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Dora, where are you? I'm at the alley. He's gone, Mom. I don't know what to do. Dora, listen to me, she said, her voice calm but urgent. Come home. We'll talk about this at home. Reluctantly, I agreed. I made my way home through the rain, my mind racing with all the things I wanted to ask her. When I finally walked through the door, Mom was waiting for me, her face pale and drawn. Sit down, Dora, she said, leading me to the kitchen table. We need to talk. I sat down, my hands trembling. Mom, I need to know the truth. About Dad, about Michael. Everything. Mom took a deep breath, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and resolve. Dora, I've been trying to protect you. Your father was a good man, but he got involved with dangerous people. People who wouldn't hesitate to hurt you to get to him. That's why we've been moving around so much. To keep you safe. But why didn't you tell me? I asked, tears streaming down my face. I had a right to know. I know, she said, her voice breaking. I thought I was doing the right thing by keeping you in the dark. But I see now that I should have told you the truth. I wiped away my tears, trying to process everything. So what happened to him? Why did he get involved with those people? Mom shook her head. I don't know all the details. He was trying to protect us, but things went wrong. He disappeared, and we've been running ever since. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. My father had sacrificed everything to keep us safe, and now he was gone. Do you think he's still out there somewhere? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Mom said, her eyes filled with sadness. I've hoped and prayed that he's still alive, but I have no way of knowing for sure. We sat there in silence for a long moment, the weight of the truth settling over us. Finally, I took a deep breath and stood up. I'm going to find him, Mom. I need to know what happened to him. Mom nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I understand. Just promise me you'll be careful. I can't lose you too. I promise, I said, giving her a tight hug. I'll be careful. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I had more questions than answers, but at least I knew the truth. My father had loved us, had tried to protect us. And now, it was up to me to find out what had happened to him. The days that followed my conversation with Michael were a blur of restless nights and constant scheming. I knew I had to tread carefully, but the urge to uncover the truth about my father consumed me. Mom sensed my distraction but chose not to push, probably hoping I'd drop the matter on my own. But I couldn't. One afternoon, after school, I decided to return to the alley. Michael wasn't there, and a part of me wondered if he'd finally moved on. I sat on the curb, replaying our conversation over and over in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that my father's past held the key to understanding my present, and possibly my future. I had to find a way to dig deeper. My first thought was to go through Mom's things. It felt wrong, invasive, but I was desperate. One evening, when she left for a late shift, I seized the opportunity. Her room was neat, almost too neat, as if she was trying to hide the chaos of our lives behind a facade of order. I started with the obvious places, drawers, under the bed, the closet. Nothing. Just clothes and old bills. Frustration mounting, I sat on the edge of her bed, my eyes scanning the room for any overlooked clue. That's when I noticed the loose floorboard under the dresser. Heart pounding, I pried it open and found a small wooden box, dusty and worn. Inside were a few letters, a photo of my parents looking happy and carefree, and a small, tarnished locket. My hands trembled as I opened one of the letters, dated 15 years ago, just before I was born. Dearest Lily. I know things are dangerous right now, but I need you to understand I'm doing this for us. For Dora. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll keep her safe. Keep her away from them. They'll use her to get to me. I'll come back for you both when it's safe. I love you more than words can say. T. Tears blurred my vision as I read the words over and over. My father had loved us, had tried to protect us. And now, it was up to me to find out what had happened to him. I carefully put everything back and replaced the floorboard, my resolve hardening. The next day at school, I could barely focus. My mind was on the letters and the photo, and the questions they raised. After the final bell rang, I made my way to the library. If I was going to find my father, I needed to understand the world he was caught up in. I started with newspaper archives, searching for any mention of my father's name or the people he was involved with. It was tedious work, scrolling through endless articles and reports, but eventually, I found a few leads. Mentions of a man named Thomas, my father, in connection with a series of investigations into organized crime. The more I read, the more I realized how deep his involvement had been. He wasn't just caught up in something dangerous, he was right in the middle of it. One name kept coming up, Ivan Markov, a notorious crime lord. My father had been trying to gather evidence against him, working undercover to bring him down. It all made sense now, the constant moving, the secrecy. My father had been a target, and by extension, so were we. I knew I was getting closer, but I also knew I was stepping into dangerous territory. As I left the library, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I needed to find Michael again. He might know more, or at least help me figure out my next steps. The next day, I skipped school entirely and headed straight for the alley. Hours passed, but there was no sign of Michael. I felt a growing sense of despair until a familiar voice called out from behind me. "Dora, what are you doing here?" I turned to see Michael, looking more haggard than ever. "I need your help," I said, my voice pleading. "I found some letters from my father. He was trying to protect us from someone named Ivan Markov. Do you know him?" Michael's face paled, and he glanced around nervously. "Not here," he said quietly. "Come with me." We walked for a while, eventually reaching an old, abandoned building. Inside, it was dark and musty, but it felt safe. Michael turned to me, his expression grave. "Ivan Markov is dangerous, Dora. Your father was brave to go up against him, but it cost him everything." "I need to find him, Michael," I said, desperation in my voice. "I need to know if he's still alive." Michael nodded slowly. "I'll help you. But we need to be very careful. Ivan has eyes everywhere. If he finds out you're looking for your father, you'll be in serious danger." "I understand," I said, my resolve unwavering. "What do we do next?" Michael sighed, rubbing his forehead. "There's someone I know, an old contact who might have information. But it's risky. We'll have to move quickly and stay under the radar." I nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. This was it, the beginning of the journey to find my father. The shadows of the past were dark and full of danger, but I had a light to guide me. And with Michael's help, I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The next few days were a whirlwind of secret meetings and whispered conversations. Michael's contact, a man named Alexei, confirmed our worst fears. Ivan Markov was still very much active, and he had people everywhere. But Alexei also had a lead, an old safe house where my father might have hidden important documents. Armed with this new information, Michael and I made plans to visit the safe house. It was a dangerous mission, but it was our only chance to find the answers we needed. As we prepared to leave, I thought about my mother, about the sacrifices she had made to keep me safe. I promised myself that I would come back with the truth, no matter what. With one last look at the alley, the place where this journey had begun, I turned and followed Michael into the unknown. The shadows of the past were closing in, but I was ready. It was time to uncover the truth and find my father, no matter the cost. The old safe house stood at the edge of town, concealed by overgrown bushes and a rickety fence that had seen better days. As Michael and I approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. This place held the secrets of my father's past, and possibly, the key to finding him. "Stay close," Michael whispered, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "We don't know who might be watching." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. The house looked abandoned, its windows boarded up and the paint peeling off the walls. But as we stepped closer, I noticed subtle signs of recent activity, a broken branch here, a footprint there. Someone had been here recently. Michael led the way, his movements careful and deliberate. He pushed open the door, which creaked loudly in the silence. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. We moved through the rooms quickly, our footsteps echoing in the empty space. "This way," Michael said, guiding me to a small room at the back of the house. It looked like an office, with a desk and shelves lined with old papers and books. Michael started searching through the drawers, his hands moving quickly but methodically. I joined him, sifting through the papers and documents. Most of it seemed like junk, old bills, letters, and newspapers. But then, I found a small, locked box hidden behind a stack of books. My heart skipped a beat. "Michael, look," I said, holding up the box. "Do you think this could be it?" He took the box from me, examining it closely. "It's possible. We need to open it." We searched the room for anything that could help us unlock the box. Finally, Michael found a small key hidden in a drawer. He inserted it into the lock, and with a click, the box opened. Inside were several documents, a few photographs, and a flash drive. Michael picked up the flash drive, his eyes narrowing. This could be important. Let's see what's on it. We found an old laptop in one of the other rooms and powered it up. Michael inserted the flash drive and began scrolling through the files. There were dozens of documents, each one more incriminating than the last. Evidence of illegal activities, financial records, and names, lots of names, including Ivan Markov's. This is it, Michael said, his voice filled with awe. This is what your father was after. He was gathering evidence to bring Markov down. My eyes widened as I read through the files. My father had risked everything to stop a dangerous criminal. And now, it was up to us to finish what he had started. We need to get this to the authorities, I said, my voice shaking with determination. This evidence could put Markov away for good. Michael nodded. But we need to be careful. If Markov finds out we have this, we're in serious danger. As we packed up the documents and prepared to leave, a sudden noise from outside made us freeze. Footsteps, and then voices, low and menacing. My heart raced as Michael motioned for me to stay quiet. We need to get out of here, he whispered. Now. We moved quickly, slipping out the back door and into the dense undergrowth. The voices grew louder, closer, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. We ran, our footsteps muffled by the soft earth, until we reached the edge of the woods. We should be safe here for now, Michael said, his breathing heavy. But we need to find a way to get this evidence to someone who can use it. As we caught our breath, I felt a surge of determination. My father had started this fight, and now it was up to me to finish it. I wasn't just doing this for him, I was doing it for my mother, for myself, and for all the people Markov had hurt. We made our way back to town, keeping to the shadows and avoiding main roads. We needed to find someone we could trust, someone who could help us take down Markov once and for all. The journey was far from over, but I knew we were on the right path. When we finally reached the town, we headed straight for the police station. Michael knew a detective there who could help us. Detective Harris was a tough, no-nonsense woman who had a reputation for taking down criminals. Michael introduced us, and I handed her the flash drive. This is evidence against Ivan Markov, I said, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. It's everything my father was trying to gather before he disappeared. Detective Harris looked at me, then at Michael, her eyes sharp and assessing. This is serious, she said. If this is real, you've just handed us the key to bringing down one of the most dangerous men in the city. But it also means you're in a lot of danger. I understand, I replied, my voice unwavering. But we need to do this. My father gave everything to stop Markov. We have to finish what he started. Detective Harris nodded, her expression softening slightly. All right. We'll protect you. But we need to move quickly. Markov won't go down without a fight. As we left the police station, I felt a sense of relief and resolve. The shadows of the past were finally lifting, and the truth was coming to light. We still had a long road ahead, but I knew we could do it. With Michael and Detective Harris by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The police launched a full-scale investigation, using the evidence we had provided. Markov's network began to unravel, and arrests were made across the city. It was dangerous work, but I felt a sense of pride knowing that we were making a difference. One evening, as I sat with Michael in a safe house provided by the police, my phone rang. It was Detective Harris. "We've found something," she said, her voice urgent. "We believe your father is alive. He's been in hiding, waiting for the right moment to resurface. We're bringing him in now." Tears filled my eyes as I listened to her words. My father was alive. After all these years, I was finally going to see him again. When the door to the safe house opened, and my father stepped inside, it felt like a dream. He looked older, more worn, but his eyes were the same, filled with love and determination. We embraced, holding on to each other as if we'd never let go. I'm so proud of you, Dora, he whispered. You've done so much. You've made everything I went through worth it. Tears streamed down my face as I hugged him tighter. I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. You showed me what it means to be brave. As we sat together, reunited at last, I knew that our journey was far from over. But now, we were together, and together, we could face anything. The shadows of the past had been banished, and a new chapter was beginning, a chapter filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. The days that followed my father's return were a whirlwind of emotions and activities. The police were in and out of our safe house, gathering more information, ensuring our safety, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation with Ivan Markov. Through it all, my father and I clung to each other, making up for lost time and rebuilding our bond. Mom arrived at the safe house shortly after Dad's return. The moment she saw him, she froze, her eyes wide with disbelief and hope. Thomas, she whispered, her voice trembling. Lily, he replied, stepping forward. They embraced, their reunion filled with tears and whispered apologies. For the first time in years, our family was whole again. With the police's protection, we began to piece our lives back together. The evidence we had handed over was enough to launch a massive operation against Markov's criminal empire. Detective Harris kept us updated, her determination to bring him down evident in every conversation. One evening, as we sat together in the safe house, Dad began to tell us his story. He spoke of his undercover work, the dangerous missions, and the sacrifices he had made to protect us. It was painful to hear, but it also filled me with pride. My father was a hero, and now, we were finally safe. The trial against Markov started a few weeks later. The courtroom was packed with reporters, police officers, and victims of Markov's crimes. Dad testified, detailing his undercover work and the evidence he had gathered. It was a tense time, but our resolve never wavered. We knew we were doing the right thing. As the trial progressed, the media began to take an interest in our story. Reporters hounded us for interviews, wanting to know more about the family that had taken down one of the city's most notorious criminals. We agreed to a few interviews, hoping to raise awareness about the dangers of organized crime and the importance of standing up for justice. One morning, as we sat around the breakfast table, Dad looked at me, his eyes filled with pride. Dora, you were the one who brought us together. Without you, we might never have found each other again. I smiled, tears in my eyes. We did it together, Dad. As a family. The trial concluded with Markov's conviction on multiple charges, including conspiracy, money laundering, and murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It was a victory, not just for us, but for all the people he had hurt over the years. With Markov behind bars, we were finally free to rebuild our lives. We moved back to our old neighborhood, determined to start fresh. The community welcomed us with open arms, their support and kindness overwhelming. Dad found work with a local security firm, using his skills and experience to protect others. Mom returned to her job, her smile brighter than it had been in years. And I, finally free from the shadows of the past, focused on my studies, dreaming of a future filled with possibilities. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Dad took my hand. I'm so proud of you, Dora. You've grown into a remarkable young woman. Your strength and courage brought us through the darkest times. I squeezed his hand, feeling a sense of peace and contentment. We did it together, Dad. And now, we have a chance to make new memories, to build a life filled with love and happiness. The shadows of the past had finally lifted, and as we sat there, surrounded by the warmth of our family, I knew that we were ready to face whatever the future held. Together, we could overcome anything. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had brought us closer together. It had shown us the power of love, the importance of family, and the strength that comes from standing up for what is right. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I looked at my parents, my heart filled with gratitude and hope. We had faced our fears, uncovered the truth, and found each other again. The past was behind us, and a new chapter was beginning, a chapter filled with endless possibilities and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.